Okay, I'm Debbie Bussinger. I'm here at the MAPS Air Museum in North Canton, Ohio. As part of the military history program, we're doing oral history interviews. And today we're at the Pancake Breakfast. It's July 14th, 2018. And I would like to have you say your name and spell your last name.
Okay, name is Jim Mesko, that's Mesko.
Can you tell me something about your childhood, what your parents did, and where you grew up?
Well, I grew up over in Coventry, spent most of my life there. My dad was a cabinet maker, mom was a housewife. Nice upbringing, it was just typical small town America. I enjoyed military history, so at an early age I started building models and picking up books, and I still have the first paperback I ever bought on military history. Just enjoy reading about military history. To me, the biggest thing, the best thing in the world to do is go into a bookstore and find books. And I've been very fortunate over the years. I've got probably close to 10,000 books on military history. My wife says, you gotta quit buying stuff. And it's like, yeah, when I quit buying stuff, I'll die. So, and there's just so much stuff out there on military history, and it ties in with my writing and stuff. And excuse me. If you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat the past.
Correct.
And military history especially, we teach very little about that. People think that none of this ever happened, that everything we have is just happened. And it's not. A lot of brave men and women fought for this country, and a lot of them died and shed their blood for it. So we need to understand that. And that's part of the reason I like to come up to MAPS is talk when I do the tours with the kids and stuff, talking about the history and stuff, and let them know what they owe to these veterans who've done so much for their country. And we've been very fortunate out here. We have veterans like we had Ralph Lynn, who passed away unfortunately, and Don Block, Bob Withey, people like that who are just fantastic people to talk to. And you listen to them, you listen to their stories, and you appreciate what they went through. So that's part and parcel of why I belong to MAPS.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have one brother who passed away back in 2005. Both my parents have passed away. Dad died in 1994. Mom died in 2008. And right now I'm fighting kidney failure caused by my exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. So I need a kidney transplant to keep on going. And right now I'm hanging in there, and all my numbers are good, so we just keep hoping for the best.
Now, what branch of service did you serve in?
I was in the Navy, which is kind of not a good indication. I never really was on a ship other than 2 weeks on board a reserve destroyer in New York Harbor. Never left the harbor, thank God, because I get seasick. And they told us when we joined the reserve unit up in Dan Street that if you don't volunteer, you weren't going to go to Vietnam. And when I went on active duty, I walked in, and the first thing I got was orders to go to Vietnam as an advisor. So I spent a year over there, and it was good duty, but it was interesting, to say the least. Came back, got out, and went back in naval intelligence for a couple of years, which again was interesting. So, but when they tell you won't go unless you volunteer, the minute you sign your name on the line, that's volunteering. So,
And what did you do in Vietnam?
I trained Vietnamese. We were part of the Vietnamization program, and we worked with them daily, prepping them to come to the United States, teaching them English, just working with them, trying to get them to, that they were going to have to take on the bulk of the war themselves.
So you were training them for what it was going to be like when we left?
Yeah,
Is that...
basically, ours was our unit was broken down. We had people out in the field with combat troops. We had people like me and myself. We were in the rear area, just prepping these guys. A lot of them were coming to the United States for additional language training. So our job was to prepare them for that, get them ready to come to the United States, get their English honed up. We kept them a lot of times because when they would go through the English class, when they were done, they'd go back out in the field and they'd get killed. So they said, this is a waste of time, just keep them here and you guys will work with them and get their English proficiency up. And we had all sorts of teaching aids, and one of the things that was interesting was we had National Geographics. I think everybody has National Geographics. And one day I was working with some class, and one of the Vietnamese officers comes up to me and says, Mr. Mesko, you're from Ohio? And I said, yeah. He said, well, here's an article, and it was on pollution. He said, there's a river in Ohio that caught fire, the Cuyahoga. I said, yeah, I remember that. He says, how do you put a river out? I said, you find some water. And they had a hard time understanding that. But it was funny in a way because it was like, yeah, how do you put a river out? Well, you find some water.
So what was your job description? What was your
Actually,
title?
my job description, I was a clerk.
Okay.
But because I had a college degree and our slot was designed for an E5 or an E6, I was just a basic E3. But this is, why should we pay these high-ranking enlisted men? We have these college graduates who are just, binding time. They said, you guys are going over there. So we spent, actually, the program started, I think, about '68. It was called Palace Dog. And it was Army guys, Navy guys, Air Force guys. We didn't have any Marines as far as I know. And the Navy guys were we were sort of the odd stepchild. And it was funny, we had our reunion a couple of years ago in Branson, Missouri. So we showed up, and at that time, all the Navy guys in Vietnam got to wear black berets. So we go to the reunion, and most of us have kept our black berets. So we go in there, and the Air Force guys, all they have are the stupid baseball caps. So we walk in and put our berets on, and they're like, oh, those are cool. You guys were so lucky. You had such cool headgear. And I was like, yeah, we did. So we had a good time at the reunion.
Yeah. Do you remember going to basic training?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What was that like? Was that the first time you'd been away from home?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
We were up at Great Lakes for 2 weeks at Great Lakes, then 2 weeks in New York Harbor. Then we spent the rest of the time doing training at the Reserve Center. And basic is interesting. You go there and they start screaming and yelling at you. And I found out that liver looks like Salisbury steak. So when we had chow one day, I said, I'll take 3 pieces of it. And I hate liver. And I look at that, it's like, oh, God. And there's no way you can make liver taste good other than throwing it away. But once you take it, you got to eat it. So trying to get rid of that stuff, I had to walk up with it under my tray and drop the whole thing in there. My hand was covered with mustard and stuff. But it was like, last time I had liver, September 1970.
So is that your most traumatic experience with basic training? Is the liver?
I wouldn't say it's traumatic, but it was probably the one that sticks out the most. I mean, you get yelled at, and you're not getting enough sleep and stuff, and getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and waiting to get a haircut for next day because it was over Memorial Day. So we didn't run in to comb our hair, and I had long hair at the time, so my hair's flopping all over the place. It was nice to have short hair. And then...
And did you get assigned to your job description when you were in basic training, or did you know what that was?
We had at the Reserve Center, we put in what we wanted to be, and I said, well, clerk typist. So, because I had a college degree. So I got that job, and I really never did much with it over in Vietnam. And it was funny because you took courses, and it was like self-grading. So one day I'm working in the office. They put me there for a couple of weeks of training, and we had the guy in charge comes over, and I type something up, and I'm like hunt and peck. I'm a horrible typist. And he says, the typewriter's dirty. Oh, okay. No, I just keep pecking away. He goes, I thought I told you to clean a typewriter. I said, no, you told me the typewriter was dirty. He said, here, clean it. So he throws me that little rubber thing that you push in there. So now I'm erasing. It's like I had no idea what I was doing. He says, who gives you your passing marks on this? I said, told him who the guy was. He says, he's always doing that. You guys are never trained to come in here. So it was an interesting experience. After about 3 weeks, they said, you've done enough for the war. You go back to your classroom.
What was your degree in?
History and political science.
Okay. So had you had an understanding then of what was going on?
Oh, yeah.
Because of your background in history?
Vietnam's always been an interesting thing to me, and it was an interesting thing. There was a book there, actually 2 books, by Bernard Fall, who was probably the dean of American writers about Vietnam. One was called Straight Without Joy, which chronicled his time there with the French forces, and then a book called Hell in a Very Small Place about the Dien Bien Phu, where the French got defeated very badly. And I'd read both books back here. When I was over there, I got copies of them just to reread. And I'm reading about the Dien Bien Phu at our compound. And a Vietnamese walks up to me and says, why are you reading about that? And I said, well, I'm interested in it. And I said, why? He said, well, Americans usually don't care about the French being over here. I said, well, I'm interested in it. He said, well, my dad was a French paratrooper, Vietnamese French paratrooper at the Dien Bien Phu. So we had an interesting conversation there. So it was interesting actually seeing stuff that you read about and actually being there where it was going on.
Did you feel like your history learning had prepared you, or was sufficient or adequate? Did it represent what you saw?
I was fortunate because I read a lot. Normal stuff, no, out of classroom and in college would not have done anything for me because I like to read and because I read a lot about it. And Indochina has always fascinated me. The French effort, there's something romantic about it. I don't know if that's the right word to use about war, but it was just an interesting period of time and the way the French did it. And seeing stuff, they're seeing relics of the French War, seeing old French aircraft on display there, French vehicles. It was interesting, and as a history person, I found it very interesting.
And what base were you on? And
We were
where was
stationed
that?
at Tan Son Nhut,
And where was that?
just north of Saigon.
Okay.
So we were a bunch of Navy guys living on an Army base. So that was always interesting.
And associating with the locals. Okay. So
Yes and no. When we were at the compound, we worked with the Vietnamese day in and day out, which was a rarity for most Americans. Most Americans didn't. So we got to know them pretty well. I had a very good Vietnamese friend who was a Vietnamese Marine who started up in the ranks and worked his way up to be an officer. And we were having a snack one time, we had a little snack bar, and this Vietnamese major comes in, and the guy was very arrogant. And most Vietnamese, to the Americans, they would defer to you because you were an instructor. Well, this guy was just like, you're dirt under my feet. And it's like, I wanted to reach across and slap him, but didn't, because I would have gotten in trouble. But after he left, I'm talking to Min, and I knew Min, and he had all sorts of combat decorations, had been in the field and stuff, and I said, how do you know this guy? He said, well, we were drafted together. I said, well, he's a major, and you're just a second lieutenant. I know your record. You've been out in the field. You got awards for bravery. How come you're just a second lieutenant and he's a major? And he said, I went out in the field. He stayed in Saigon. And I think that kind of summed up the war right there. You know, this guy had political influence and he used it. And Min was one of the good ones. I don't know whatever happened to him. I would love to see him again. He probably never got out of Vietnam, but he was one of the good ones. So, and we had, you know, they were like any people. Some of them were good, some were bad. We had one of the ladies who took care of we called them mama sons, who took care of the barracks. Nicest lady in the world, just like a second mother. And she lost her son, was killed, and we really felt sorry for her. And we all took up a collection of stuff for her. She was a very nice lady. And I remember one time we'd been on patrol that night around the perimeter. We were up late, so we had to sleep in. So around noon, and they had a fish sauce called Nuc Mam, which is fermented fish and water, and it sits out in the sun for a month. Smells to high heaven. So I'm there trying to sleep, and they started cooking with this stuff, and it's like woke me up out of a sound sleep. Like, what is that stuff? Oh God, because it smells like a backed up toilet. And she comes and she says, "Oh, this is good for you. Put hair on your chest." It's like, no, it'll take my hair off. It's like, you know. So yeah, interesting things like that, you know, just.
Did you learn the language, or did they understand
A little
English?
bit. They knew English pretty well, but our program, you could teach somebody a foreign language not knowing their language, and they gave. We spent a whole day doing that one day, and it's very simple. It's like you point to something, you say camera, but you use it in your language, and you say, it's sort of like panographing, but you start to understand it. And we could, at the end of that day, we could speak a little bit of Vietnamese, and you picked up a little bit. But since they knew English, it was relatively simple to communicate with most of them.
And how did they feel about us being there?
They liked our money. They liked our Salem cigarettes. And that was one of the things, I smoked a little bit in college, but when I was over there, I always had a pack of Salem with me, because one of the things that we used to parody the Vietnamese is, hey, GI, you got Salem. And they hold their hands up like that, and you give them a cigarette, and they're happy as all get out for that.